Welcome to Scaleforum 2001, Britain's premier 4mm fine scale model railway exhibition. This year's show, which takes place at its regular venue, the Leatherhead Leisure Centre, celebrates the 25th anniversary of the Scalefour Society. To mark its Silver Jubilee, the Society has assembled 11 layouts that represent the very best of 4mm fine scale modelling. During the course of this film, we will explore all the layouts on show, demonstrate the basics of track construction to P4 standards, explain the history of Scaleforum, take a look at the demonstration area, investigate P4 coach and locomotive construction, reveal who were this year's competition and award winners, and discover the other activities that create that special Scaleforum atmosphere of friendship and inspiration. So first, for those who are new to P4 modelling, here is a short explanation of 4mm track, followed by a short history of Scaleforum. All the layouts at this weekend's show at first sight appear to be the same scale as 00. This is true in that coaches, wagons, locomotives and buildings are all built to a scale of 4mm to the foot. The important difference lies in the track and wheels. The track on the left is 00, with a gauge of 16.5mm, but the track on the right is P4 with a gauge of 18.83mm. That is a 4mm scale version of the prototype. The difference in width, together with wheels of scale profile, is obvious. Over the past 25 years, Scaleforum has built a reputation for exhibiting high-quality layouts, as these pictures from previous years illustrate. Scaleforum first found a home at the Commonwealth Institute in Kensington. These early events were quite small compared to today's exhibition, and initially provided a venue for members to meet and discuss their latest projects. Growing in both size and stature over the years, Scaleforum's venue moved in 1984 to the City University in central London. Now open to the general public, it was beginning to gain a reputation for showcasing the very best in 4mm fine scale model railways. Higher attendance figures in turn led to an increase in the Society's membership. Scaleforum provided a wonderful opportunity to promote P4 standards and inspire newcomers to join the Society. It also highlighted the friendship, expert experience and benefits that Scalefour membership can offer. In 1991, after finally outgrowing the City University, Scaleforum moved to its present home at Leatherhead in leafy Surrey. The Leisure Centre has provided a comfortable and accessible venue for the many thousands of layout operators, traders, demonstrators and members of the public that have attended over the past 11 years. Their support, together with all the tremendous effort put in by the backroom boys and girls that transforms the centre from sports hall to a major exhibition and ensures a trouble-free event, is much appreciated by the Society. Scaleforum just wouldn't happen without their hard work. Now, let's move on to this year's show, where we begin with Sheffield Bridgehouses. Just before Christmas 1845, a train of 20 carriages, hauled by 2 locomotives, left the Bridgehouses terminus of the Sheffield, Ashton-under-Lyne and Manchester Railway. Soon after midday, it arrived at the Store Street terminus of the Manchester and Birmingham Railway. Thus was opened throughout the late lamented Woodhead line. This model, by John Quick, was built to commemorate the sesquicentenary of that occasion. The major problem for prospective modellers of the very early period of railway history is the severe shortage of information. However, it's all part of the hobby to find such information as does exist. The track plan is based on a map of central Sheffield dated 1851. 2 features should be noted. Firstly, the requirement for an up passenger train to change direction twice before entering the platform. And secondly, the lack of run-round facilities at the passenger platform. All the track work was built using P4 methods. The original stone block sleepers of the SA and MR are represented by thick carved squares. A P4 rivet will turn sufficiently, and then the rails may be soldered to gauge over a drawing. Hidden by the ballast are the wooden sleepers that hold the stone blocks to gauge. The chairs are the old Kingsway type, which, while being too large, do help with a desire for realism. As Bridgehouses was only meant to be a temporary station, it was quickly altered, becoming a goods depot when Sheffield Victoria opened in September 1851. Some of the buildings on the model are therefore imaginary. The half-relief warehouse is based on the structure that still exists at the Canal Basin in Sheffield. Bridgehouses Works is a model of a former cutlery works, the prototype of which still exists. The station building is a model of what was the Charity School, built in 1825. The main materials used in the construction of buildings and retaining walls are thick card and stone or brick embossed plastic. A few SA and MR carriage drawings exist, and a handful of vehicles will be built. The open thirds were originally Dutch Railways broad gauge models made to 3.5mm scale. The 2 small covered vehicles are Kay's Mataro kits, made for a Spanish prototype. The larger carriage is a conversion of a Triangle rocket carriage. Very little is known about the company's goods stock, and reliance is placed on the fact that very early goods vehicles were generally very similar. John had 4 wagons built by Martin Chapman from Liverpool and Manchester drawings. 4 locomotives run on the layout. The first built was Little Sharpie, Pluto. Then followed Atlas and Sphinx, both sharp goods engines. Pegasus, a Crampton locomotive, is a recently built model. They were all made from scratch and with such basic information that John has no idea how they were painted. Moving forward in time to the 1920s, we arrive at Laxfield. At Hawley Junction, on the Great Eastern Norwich Main Line, the Mid-Suffolk Light Railway was projected eastwards, across country, in the general direction of Halesworth. Construction began in 1902, and by 1908 had reached a point 2 miles or so beyond the village of Laxfield, where both the line and the money ran out. By 1912 the track had been abandoned back to Laxfield, which then became the recognised terminus on the line. One of the characteristic features of the line was the unique lettering style of the station name boards, designed by a local craftsman. John Watson built Laxfield as a first-time exercise in prototype fine-scale modelling to P4 standards. The buildings and track plan are as accurate as the supply of photographs and remaining foundations would allow. Trackwork is conventional bullhead rail soldered to pre-riveted plywood sleepers. Although the prototype originally featured a light section flat bottom rail, it was replaced with heavier section bullhead rail in 1947 so as to allow J15 class tender engines to use the line. Point operation is by lever frame and torque rods, giving quiet, slow and easily adjusted blade throw. The crossing gate mechanism uses a catch plate engaging with two yokes that collect each gate in turn and deposit them very precisely in their open or closed position. All grass areas are pre-dyed with surgical lint, glued fluffy side down and the backing ripped off when set. The trees and shrubs are made with wire frames and given a foam scenic mat leaf cover. The wild flowers by the line side and vegetables in the allotment are made either from coloured tissue paper cut with various punches and assembled on wire or fibre stems, or from minced foam built up around the stems. Nearly all the buildings, apart from the engine shed, were clad in corrugated iron. To model these, a framework of styrene was made and then individual sheets of corrugated 7th thou pewter were glued onto the framework. Locomotives and rolling stock are all kit or scratch built with compensated chassis and use the Alex Jackson coupling system. They're typical of those that would have been seen on the Midi prior to the First World War, during the 30s or just before the end of services. The line closed to all traffic on the 28th of July 1952. To build a layout to this standard takes great skill and patience. It also requires a wide range of modelling items, most of which can be found at Scaleforum. As ever, the trade stands formed a very popular part of the show. Situated in the main hall, they offered a unique opportunity to purchase modelling items from specialist traders. And with over 40 stands, a huge selection of models and accessories were available. The Scalefour Society had its own stand with specialist P4 items from their stores. The bring and buy stand, members could dispose of unwanted items and, with a bit of luck, acquire that long sought after coach or wagon. Returning to layouts, we joined day trippers enjoying the sun on the Hampshire coast in the 1920s. Lee on the Solent was a bold attempt at town planning in the late 1800s. The promoters hoped that here was a watering place with everything going for it. A splendid beach, pleasant climate, superb views across to the Isle of Wight and the sheltered areas of the Solent for boating. It was also much nearer to London than Bournemouth, which was obviously the place to imitate. The railway opened in 1894 as the seaside terminus of the branch that left the LSWR Fareham Gosport line at Fort Brockenhurst. Alas, the high hopes with which the line was built were never realised, and the branch was closed in Southern Railway days, with the last regular passenger services running at the end of 1930. The layout was originally built by professional model maker Colin Hayward, and was an early example of an exhibition layout built to P4 standards, making its debut in October 1981. Colin kindly donated the layout to the East Hants area group of the Scalefour Society in 1993, and since then a number of modifications have been made by various members of the group. The trackwork has been completely reconstructed and fully chaired on a removable sub-baseboard. The portion of track in the passing loop has been correctly represented by flat-bottom track, ballasted with shingle as in the prototype. Turnouts are actuated by means of tortoise point motors. More recently, the greensward, station platforms and line-side fencing have been completely reconstructed and the beach has been added. The layout today is presented around the time of the grouping, 1923. Motive power includes an ex-LBSCR D-class tank engine and a Terrier from a much modified case kit. Both are fully compensated. Rolling stock includes gate stock set and various coal wagons from local merchants. In the near future, it is hoped to model the original 2 composite coaches to allow representation of trains as used from opening to 1909. The next layout is rather different to the others at this year's show. The engine shed at the junction of the NER Weirhead branch and the Bishop Auckland Crook line had a checkered history, being completed in 1876 and continuing in use with periods of closure until 1935. It was constructed to house locomotives allocated to Shildon, which were outbased for working in the Weir Valley area. Originally named Witton Junction on the architect's drawings, it was renamed Weir Valley, probably during construction. The shed layout was different from other NER sheds, being a part roundhouse, hence the initial interest in creating a model. The builder knows no other similar NER structure, although other pre-grouping companies had similar sheds, such as the NBR at Berwick. Photographs of the structure show 6 stalls, but copies of original drawings show a proposed extension to 11 stalls. To try to determine the final arrangement, builder David Fenney carried out some on-site excavation and believes the building plan was as modelled here. The roof arrangement is more difficult to determine. A recently located photograph showing a different arrangement from the drawing. However, David prefers the multi-ridge style and has modelled that. The colliery trackwork and bridge are unprototypical and are included to form a scenic break when the layout is not on exhibition. Many years of development have been required to get to this stage, and it may be further developed with unprototypical adjacent baseboards to include a permanent way yard and station throat. Trackwork is hand-built using mainly plywood sleepers and nickel-silver rail. Early efforts with Gibson components causing problems around pointwork installations. Obtaining a satisfactory and reliable operating turntable has proved difficult, the present arrangement being the 4th attempt, working electrics now being much simplified. The buildings are scratch built from a combination of plastic, card and featherboard, with a shed roof of brass and nickel-silver sections, plywood and plasticard. Motive stock, mostly constructed by Ian Sadler, is generally numerically correct for the Weir Valley area in the period modelled, 1910. It should be noted, however, that the number of locomotives on show would not be prototypical at this location, when a maximum of up to 6 would be normal. Other rolling stock is a combination of kit and scratch built. Travelling back in time, now we arrive at the Ulfa Light Railway. By the turn of the 18th century, the mineral wealth of Cumbria was being exploited to feed the burgeoning industrial revolution. In 1816, a 4-foot gauge plateway was laid from the workings in the hills to the kilns near the village of Ulpha. This plateway was horse-worked and superseded the original wooden wagonway. Some of the lime was then taken by road to the village of Barrow-in-Furness, where it was loaded into coasters, the standard long-distance transport of the day. Other mining and quarrying companies sprang up in the area, and when the Furness Railway reached Foxfield on the Duddon estuary in 1848, a standard gauge line was built to run from there up the Duddon Valley to Ulpha. Minerals could then be loaded directly into standard gauge wagons at various points along the line, and by 1852, when the Whitehaven Tunnel to the north was opened, they had access to the mainline railway network. Passenger services at this time were confined to workmen's trains. When the Light Railway Act was passed in 1896, the Management Committee applied for a light railway order to provide a passenger service on the line, and the Ulpha Light Railway was born. In common with many light railways, they purchased a number of second-hand carriages, together with a second-hand locomotive to pull them. A station of sorts was also erected close to the transfer sidings at Ulpha. Built by the Norwood MRC, this model represents the Edwardian period. The original plateway has long since been abandoned, along with the quarry workings it served. A 2-foot gauge steam-operated feeder line is currently being used to bring limestone to the transfer sidings. Away from the layouts, there is a great deal more to see. Organised by the Scalefour Society, the large demonstration area, always a popular feature at Scaleforum, again attracted a considerable amount of interest. The experts on hand offered practical advice to both beginner and the more experienced modeller. Subjects covered this year included road vehicles, Jeff Kent, Alex Jackson couplings, Tony Williams, landscaping, Barry Norman, coach construction, Stephen Williams, and paint and lining, John Dobson. At the Society's own Loco clinic, Mike Sharman and Ian Rice gave expert advice for those with problem chassis. Although the very thought seems to fill the novice with fear, many modellers working to P4 standards build their own track from scratch. You can buy ready-made track using moulded plastic sleepers and chairs. The appearance is very good, and it can be bent to form curves. In this next sequence, filmed at Scaleforum 96, Tony Sullivan demonstrates that making your own track is quite straightforward given the necessary tools and materials. The ply sleepers are first popped into a container of dilute wood stain. After drying, brass rivets are inserted in the pre-punched holes and secured by either gently hitting them with a small hammer or using a riveting tool. The rivets are then cleaned up and tinned. It's convenient to use a jig to hold the sleepers as shown here. Then a length of rail is soldered to the heads of the rivets. In this demonstration, the rail is soldered to only some of the rivets, the other positions being secured by plastic chairs. Some builders prefer to solder the rail to all rivet positions, then add cosmetic chairs later. For curved track, the single rail with sleepers is lifted from the jig, curved to the desired shape, and the second rail is fixed. Whether making straight or curved lengths, the second rail is held in position by using the jigs available from Scalefour stores. Turnouts are constructed using a similar process. A paper template shows exactly where to position sleepers, which are secured to the template with double-sided adhesive tape. Once you've built your track, you'll need some stock to operate on it, and later we'll see how to construct a coach from an etched kit. Our next layout is presented as a model under construction. Glen Bogle has been a long time in planning. Only recently has execution started, and an invitation to Scaleforum has spurred builder Chris Longley into frantic activity. To set the scene, those of you who have read Compton Mackenzie's Monarch of the Glen will know that Glen Bogle is 7 to 8 miles northwest of Speen Bridge. Chris has assumed that Donald MacDonald of Ben Nevis financed a branch from the West Highland Railway at Speen Bridge to his castle at Glen Bogle in the early 20th century. The period depicted is between 1930 to 1935, and Chris is attempting to show a North British Railway style light railway in a West Highland setting. There's nothing startling or revolutionary in the construction techniques used. As you can see, construction is in the early stages, but Chris hopes that some idea of what he aims to achieve can be seen. Perhaps we'll see a completed Glen Bogle at a future Scaleforum, but now we're heading south and forward in time to Amlwch. Amlwch was the terminus of the 17-mile branch line from Gyrwan Junction on the Chester-Holyhead main line. Built by the Anglesey Central Railway in 1867, it was closed to passenger traffic in 1964. For the purposes of this layout, however, David Clark has assumed that the station did not close, and in 1977 was still flourishing, owing to the reopening of the refinery just up the branch and the fictitious Puntlins holiday camp a mile or so up the coast. It's also assumed that the Octel factory branch has been rerouted away from the station area because of prevailing safety regulations. The station area is modelled as it would have been prior to closure in December 1964, but with a little judicious modernisation and alteration. Motive power is mainly in the hands of classes 24, 25, 40 and 47, with the occasional 45 peak being in evidence. DMU or 4-coach Loco hauled trains, split from the main Euston to Holyhead expresses at Bangor, cater for passenger traffic. Freight traffic consists of oil trains, which need to use the station's run-round facilities, coal, ballast and engineer supplies, parcels trains, and all manner of goodies for the holiday camp. Main features modelled from the prototype are the road bridge, goods shed, station building, grain and fertiliser store, and the old disused cattle dock. Baseboards are of the open top style of construction, with 12mm plywood sides and 9mm plywood tops for the track bed. Track work on the scenic side is a mixture of C&L ready to lay and ply rivet with cosmetic chairs, with cassette type operation being used for the fiddle yard. Turnout operation is by the wire in tube method, operated by slide switches that change the polarity of the crossing V. Control is by an AMR handheld unit wired with an ECM transformer. Returning to the demonstration area, we're now going to look at coach and locomotive construction. To get rolling stock, it's possible to buy ready-to-run wagons or coaches and change the wheels to P4. If you want something of a higher standard or more unusual, there is a large array of kits. Taking coaches as an example, there are many traders who offer all manner of kits to satisfy the most particular of modellers. In this next sequence, filmed at Scaleforum 96, Mike Ainsworth demonstrates the basic techniques used for coach construction. Brass is the usual medium, in which the parts are etched out from a thin sheet. So the first action is to remove the parts to be worked on, either by cutting it out with shears or by knife on a hard surface. Next, you will need to remove tabs and clean up the surface ready for soldering. Here, the buffer beam for a coach comes in 2 layers. They are joined together using resistance soldering, the parts being held by a magnet on a steel base. The buffer beam is then mated to the coach by first applying flux. Then, with a small amount of solder on the iron, one end is tacked, then the other end. If all is correct and square, more solder can be run along to complete the joint. So, gradually and carefully, parts removed from the brass fret are built up to form the complete coach structure. There are of course other intermediate steps, such as making the bogies or attending to interior detail in order to complete the whole job. Building wagons and coaches is one thing, locomotives can be rather trickier. One approach, and an easy way to start, is to buy a ready-to-run model, remove the 00 wheels and substitute P4 wheels. This Great Western Prairie is one example. The locomotive was stripped down, the original wheel sets removed, then P4 wheels and axles were fitted. Wire pickups bear on the wheel treads. A fine selection of kits, usually in brass and nickel silver, are available from several suppliers. Some require the additional purchase of wheel sets and motor. They take a good many hours to build, with the application of skills such as bending thin metal and soldering. Nevertheless, they result in very fine, good running models, with the added satisfaction of achievement in miniature engineering. This incomplete Great Western Grange is built from a Malcolm Mitchell kit and painted and lined by John Dobson. The kit even includes parts for the backhead in the cab. The underside shows the Finescale wheels, brake gear and the fine phosphor bronze wire pickups bearing on the wheel flanges. Returning to the show, our next layout is set a century ago in the majestic Scottish Highlands. Corrie represents a small Highland station on the oft-mooted but never built line from Garve to Ullapool in the heyday of the Highland Railway around 1903. The track plan and general setting are actually based on Ruthven on the other side of Scotland, but the mountainous scenery tries to provide a setting for Simon de Souza's collection of Highland stock. The layout was never intended for intensive operation. The track, built using C&L components on ply sleepers, includes the typically Highland interlaced sleepers in the pointwork, a feature not often modelled. All buildings and structures, with only a couple of exceptions, and all the freight rolling stock, amounting to some 60 vehicles, are scratch built, using methods described in the late lamented Modelling Railways Illustrated and Rail Model Digest magazines. The very distinctive Highland Railway double-deck sheep vans always attract comment. Several locomotives are fitted with the typically David Jones style sloping smokebox doors and massive Allen outside framing. The carriages are kit built from a variety of manufacturers. Corrie was built in response to Graham's love of the railway that winds its way through the Highland scenery, and has managed to capture some of the atmosphere of that wonderful place for you to enjoy. Time to head south, this time to central England. Buntingham is a small terminus based on Buntingford, on the GER in Hertfordshire. The layout, constructed by David Crossley, is set in early BR days. The branch became a victim of the Beeching Axe and closed to passengers in November 1964. Unusual features include working point rodding coupled to electrically interlocked signals, so that trains can only move on correctly signalled sections. Automatic coupling and uncoupling is achieved by means of Alex Jackson couplers and hidden solenoids. The layout is the work of Ray Hammond, well known to members of the Scalefour Society, and contains much of originality. It was started in 1973, mainly in order to experiment with exactly scaled down wheel and track dimensions to a scale of 4mm to 1 foot. Thus the layout is to S4 rather than P4 standards. In recent years, Ray has moved on to complete a new larger layout, Thursford, to similar standards, leaving Alan Bithry and David to refurbish Buntingham at a very leisurely pace. So far, the main electrical feeds and the lighting have been brought up to date, along with some minor scenic touch-ups. It's surprising that, for a layout which appeared at Barnet in 1981 and Imrex in 1983, so little appears dated. Ray retains his interest in Buntingham and joined the operating team during the exhibition. He's been instrumental in recalling the stock used when Buntingham was exhibited under his ownership. The present owner and friends not possessing enough between them for full or even part operation. The annual competitions form an important part of the show and provide much inspiration and interest. Class winners in this year's Chairman's Cup were, in Class 1, Ian Harrison for his GWR 57XX pannier tank, in Class 2, Alan Robinson for his GWR full brake. Ian Harrison's GWR brake composite was highly commended in this class. No award in Class 3 this year, but Jim Summers won Class 4 with this Caledonian Railway signal box. Paul Moore won Class 5 with his Bachmann Class 25. And finally, Mr. R. Sutherland won Class 6 with this rake of 3 GWR coaches. Steve Banks won the Cumberland Bowl with these 2 SR vans. The overall winner of the Chairman's Cup was Paul Moore. Vincent de Bode, with his Flintfield layout, took the MRJ Chalice. The Beth Evans Award went to Ian Rice. The Irwell Novice Shield was won by Paul Bell, with his West Sussex Railway Peckett 242 tank, Selsey. The Deputy Chairman's Cup tests running performance over a specially built test track. High build quality and precision are required to succeed in this category. Winner in Class B was Paul Moore, with a Bachmann Class 25/3. First in Class A by just 1 point, and winner of the Deputy Chairman's Cup was Mike Sharman with his scratch-built BT Well tank. The competition was organised and run by members of the North East Finescale group. Later, we'll find out which layout was the People's Choice for the York Trophy. But now, let us return to the show, where the Midland Railway is the setting for the next stop on our journey. Built by the Gleatham Area Group, Brinkley represents an imaginary former Midland connection to the GWR, set in BR days. Brinkley was a small, peaceful country town on the Oxfordshire-Buckinghamshire border until, in the absence of an agreement on running rights over LNWR metals, the Midland Railway decided to build a direct link from Wellingborough to the GWR at Oxford. In addition to providing lucrative cross-country passenger and freight services, the line also attracted business from the Northamptonshire ironstone quarries, sending ore to South Wales steelworks, with return traffic of Welsh coking coal. The Midlands soon recognised the possibilities of Brinkley's strategic central location. A large marshalling yard was constructed just outside the town that was soon handling freight from all parts of the country. To cope with the demands of this traffic, a new motive power depot was built adjacent to the station to stable and service both freight and passenger locos. Once the shed was open, many of the trains to and from the south and west were hauled by GWR locos through to Brinkley, rather than changing locos at Oxford as had previously been the case. This practice continued through grouping into BR days. The depot was also home to the yard shunter and branch line loco working the Stratford-on-Avon and Midland Junction line, which linked up with the main line just north of Brinkley. Local industry and the farming community generated enough business to keep the small goods yard busy. The yard also served as a base for the local coal merchant. The brewery next door was served by its own siding that left the main line to the north of the station. 3 trains a day served these needs: the local pickup freight, the branch freight, and a transfer working from the main marshalling yard. Our final layout, Flintfield, makes a welcome return to Scaleforum, having last been exhibited back in 1996. Flintfield, constructed by Vincent de Bode, represents the Great Eastern Railway in a rural setting of the 1920s. It's a fictitious terminus located in Suffolk, typifying the flat country of East Anglia. The track plan and most of the buildings are based on Eye, one of the remote Suffolk branches closed in the 1930s to passengers. It's called Flintfield after a farm in the neighbourhood of Eye. Operation is a little unusual. The goods yard is operated from the back of the layout, standing on a transport crate of reinforced 4mm ply, while the passenger loop is worked from the front by a second operator, who often talks with the public, gets confused and messes it all up. One of the delights of exhibiting. There are no conventional baseboards. Instead, a supporting frame made from ply timber box beams, 80mm by 40mm, is used. It supports the layout over its full length and about half the depth, and is split in the middle for transportation. The joints are made very unobtrusive due to jigsaw construction. Only the track is attached to the base, with scenic boards hooked to it fore and aft in jigsaw fashion. The backdrop, painted by Len de Vries, proscenium arch and lighting, are attached to another box beam resting on two legs on the supporting frame. Track is C&L with some rivets in important places. Turnouts are operated by Old Dutch PO relays. Dave Doe provided historical information about the GER. He also made the signals, equipped with Davin bouncing devices. Although simple to make, they produce a very natural movement. Scaleforum 2001 proved memorable for the Flintfield team, as together with the MRJ Chalice, the layout was also the People's Choice and won the York Trophy. Vincent de Bode accepted the award on behalf of the Flintfield team. The trophy is presented each year to the layout which, in the opinion of those attending, gives the most interest and pleasure. The award commemorates the incomparable service given to the Scalefour Society by the late Ken York. We close this review of Scaleforum 2001 with a last look around the show. It provided an enjoyable experience for all those who came and celebrated the Society's Silver Jubilee in fine style. Arrangements for Scaleforum 2002 to take place at the Leatherhead Leisure Centre on the 28th and 29th of September are well underway. I hope that you will be there to enjoy the finest model railway exhibition of the year.